Well, welcome back to our special series of public engagement training initiatives. We're talking with stakeholders, program leaders, students that are participating in programs, and we're asking them all these hard questions to learn about what they're experiencing, what they're learning from participating in them. And today we have none other than David Wright, the director of the program in Communication of Science and Technology, or CSET, which we'll be using that acronym quite a bit, at Vanderbilt University. Professor Wright, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me today.
Now, quick backstory. I heard Professor Wright talk about CSET at a recent Science Talk conference in Portland, Oregon. And I knew immediately that I needed to talk to him. In this panel that he organized, he had a faculty member from CSET and two students that were also part of the program. So David, I'd like you to just tell us a little bit about CSET so that we can have the context in mind about the program.
Well, our program is unique in the country at the undergraduate level. There are just not other programs that are designed as a major to train students in the communication of science. Our program started in 1997 as a collection of independent study participants. And the founder, David Weintraub, thought there might be a critical mass of students at Vanderbilt who would be interested. And so in 98, we created a minor and then eventually a major. In 2015, the program underwent a major revision and began to grow. The college decided that CSET needed to grow or die, right? And so David Weintraub made a significant investment, and it led to us getting a National Endowment for the Humanities grant in 2020 to completely revise the major, to go from sort of one of these typical menu-based majors where students are plucking things from departments all over the university to actually designing a core in CSET that the students would take. And the basis of that proposal was that we would design the program to train scientist citizens. That is, this is an idea that a professor at the University of Washington, Leah Cacciarelli, came up with that basically says scientists have a moral obligation to participate in civic democratic processes. And a key component of that is their communication of their knowledge in usable ways to the citizenry. And so, that's an entirely different way of training scientists how to communicate. It's no longer scientists talking to scientists, which is typically what we train undergraduates to do, to go to a national meeting or a regional meeting, right? It's now teaching them how to communicate to the public with useful information, right?
Yeah. So your program has three core principles, right? The scientific and humanist perspective, the experiential elements in the course design, in addition to the ethics component. Now, these came about because you all got together around, I believe, 2020, right? There was a grant that you received. And so I'm curious if you just take us back there, what did you find? Because you did a quick landscape as well, right? To understand what was missing in the field to then decide these were the three core principles that you wanted to focus on.
Well, we were really fortunate, not only in the fact that we had support from the National Endowment of the Humanities, but we also had support from our dean's office and a sponsorship for a postdoc. And we were able to organize this core group to really begin to ask fundamental questions about what we wanted our program to be. And so, we asked the question, what really makes a true interdisciplinary program? Not humanities in the hand service of science, but equal partners. And how do programs that have these aspects do that? How are they really successful? And one of the underpinnings of our perspective was that it's the people are key. If you find a group of people who are really committed, invested in making these kinds of connections for the students, then you begin to see exactly how far you can go. And so after that, it was like, well, what's the best way to bring those students in? Well, let's give them something they won't forget, right? And so almost every class in CSET has this memorable exercise or experiment or activity that students, they become famous at Vanderbilt because students take them. They have this experience that they totally didn't expect. And then the word gets out. Right, and so suddenly, you have a class like technical writing, which sounds like it might be the most dry, boring class that you could. And it's got a wait list of 20 or 30 people because of the experiential component that allows the faculty to meet the students where they are. Right.
Yeah. And so you mentioned the wait list. I mean, this is impressive. So this is an undergraduate program.
That's right.
Right. So can graduate students take some of these courses? And
graduate students can take some of these courses. About 50% of the courses have, comparable graduate student courses for credit. In our design, those graduate students have additional assignments, and they work as a cohort because there's usually just 2 or 3 graduate students in a course. So they work as a small group, as a separate workshop group, things like that in the individual classes. And I would say across the semester, we have between 3 and 5 graduate students who would take these courses.
Yeah.
One of the next areas to think about expanding is what does graduate education look like in this space for our program?
Right.
And is it offering degrees? Is it offering certificates? Is it designing just courses that graduate students would be interested in taking to develop skills, right?
Right. So, I mean, yeah, you have, I think in your talk, you mentioned 95 majors, right? And 60% of them are double majors, right? Science and engineering, double majors. And then humanities, the other 20. And then the last 20 are single CSET majors. I'll come back to that. Just hold that thought for a second, because earlier you mentioned you had the support of the dean's office, right? And I want to get into that conversation a little bit, because some of other deans may be watching this and wondering, other programs watching, saying, how did you get the support of the higher levels? And was that important in ensuring this program continued, right, to survive and to get to where it is right now?
It absolutely was, because the program could only exist on the backs of a few individuals for so long. It's sort of size limiting, people stealing time, people cross-listing classes, hiding the CSET offering in a physics and astronomy class called the Trial of Galileo, for example, or things like that. Well, I mean, people know. I mean, this is what we do when we want a program to go. But eventually it became apparent that if we were going to grow the program, we needed dedicated faculty and some investment. And we've been really fortunate that at Vanderbilt, which really supports interdisciplinary research across a broad spectrum of disciplines, was willing to make that investment. And even next year we'll finally have a building. So
wow.
Right now, it's been virtual, sort of. That has been virtual with people in offices all over campus. We have one journalist who's in an office in the basement of the old gymnasium. I mean, so finally getting those kinds of resources seem to make all the difference.
I see. So resources, I'm assuming they've probably provided some FTEs, right?
That's
hiring
right.
faculty. And then, of course, now you're getting space very important, right?
That's right. That's right. I mean, because here's the deal: without those components, it's really hard to build community, and that community is really important when you have an undergraduate program. I mean, it's important in all kinds of aspects, but particularly for an undergraduate program, having community is what helps us build an identity when we have so many double majors, for example, right? So that they really appreciate what CSET brings to the table for them in their futures.
Yeah, and I think that's what the two students you had on the panel, Noah and Emily, right?
Right.
They were talking about that community aspect and meeting different students from different backgrounds, right? Physics and English, and I believe Emily was an English major.
Right, she is.
So was this by design?
Well, yes. So an aspect of the program has always been that there needed to be significant science coursework. So there's 15 hours, 5 classes. And so that naturally led to science and engineering double majors because they easily sort of achieve that. And that's what I call double majors who go deep, right? But when we looked at it from the side of the humanities, we needed to reimagine what science meant. And we changed the requirements so that they could also go broad. And so this is what we find many of the humanities and social science double majors doing, is that they're taking a couple of classes in 2 or 3 natural science departments and maybe a statistics or something to get the 5 courses. And so that going deep aspect is what makes it so attractive for double majors in the natural sciences and engineering.
Yeah. And then one of the things that you mentioned in your talk, you mentioned that the core set of courses that you guys have really help students find their voice, right? Whether it is in oral communication, whether it's in writing. Can you tell us about these core courses and what are you doing there to really build this foundation which they can build on top of?
Sure. So we have 3 core courses. We have a public presentation course, which is designed to give students the skills they need to talk about their science. It's got some basic communication, standard communication, public presentation, know your audience, but it also has a lot of in-person exercises so that people develop rhetorical skills, not just presentation skills, so that they can make arguments and be persuasive. Okay, so that's the scientific communication course, which we call CSET 1500. We have a survey course called Tools and Techniques of Science Communication, which is CSET 2100. This course is designed to give students sort of an overview of sort of tools and methods that are based on sort of written, long form journalism, op-ed pieces, letters to the editor, how to do letter writing campaigns to Congress, blogging, vlogging, podcasting, interviewing skills. So this is the CSET 2100, which also gives students the beginning of their portfolio. So they have a bunch of different kinds of exercises, which they can then begin to develop into a portfolio. And then we have a class called CSET 2500, which is called Science for Everyone. And Science for Everyone is CSET's general education course. It's a big class, 200 students. And for them, it's designed to start with the Big Bang and build up in our understanding. So it's a critical examination of the data about why we think things happened and how you can take the Big Bang to lead to the structure of the atom, to lead to chemical bonds, to lead to chemical reactivity, to lead to biological molecules, to lead to evolution, to lead to climate. That's sort of the span of the course. For the CSET students in the class is also an exercise in how you communicate these complex ideas in bite-sized pieces. And so these cores work to build the set of skills that science communicators need to be successful.
Yeah, and then you mentioned earlier that now you used to have other faculty teaching these courses in a distributed way, but now you have a core set of faculty. I believe there are 7.
That's right.
And of course, you want to grow that and expand that. Do these 7 provide essentially all that training to these students, or do you have a mixed bag of other faculty outside in other departments who are contributing?
Well, through a series of courses, which we call bridging courses, which are courses that are designed to put science in the context of humanistic understanding, history of science, science and literature, the economic power of research and development, these kinds of things. Through those bridging courses, we bring in a lot of other faculty to participate in CSET. And so these are in anthro, econ, English, history, some of the foreign languages even have courses about certain figures of science or movements in science that our students can take those bridging courses about. And so in addition to the core faculty, the students get a lot of training from the faculty who are offering these bridging classes.
Okay, I see. And so about 60% of your students go on to professional schools, right? Medical school, and so forth. And you have that 20% are doing dentistry. They're doing graduate school, journalism, school, Masters of Public Health. And I'm assuming probably other grad programs, right? PhDs and programs. Do you have a sense, given the length of the program that's been around, have you tracked these students to see in the long term? What are they doing now? Are they scientists? Are they something else, right?
Right. So we have some data. So basically, when we revised the curriculum, we started tracking because it was a requirement of the grant. And our data shows that a lot of the students are actually practicing science communication. So they'll go and get a master's of public health, and they'll be a science communication officer in New York City Public Health Department or in Nashville Public Health Department. We have students who've gone on and completed their journalism program and now are assistant directors at science museums around the country. And so the students who graduate with the CSET degree find very interesting ways to match their training with their experience.
I see. And I think in your session as well, you were asking both the 2 students what they wanted to do, right, with their careers. Right. And it sounds to me actually part of the program that they like is the flexibility that is in place, right?
That's right.
After they take the core, of course, and then they follow their voice, right? Hopefully they find their voice in the core, and then they can build on it, right, across the board.
That's exactly right.
I'm curious, have graduate programs at Vanderbilt, are you collaborating with them in any way? I'm assuming some of them are probably thinking, hey, I would like my graduate students to participate in some of these courses. Are they doing that?
So there are some practical obstacles. And one of the practical obstacles is, of course, the tuition dollars required for coursework and the hours of coursework that go into the basic core curriculum of graduate programs. And they're pretty rigid at Vanderbilt in terms of they don't have a lot of room for extra departmental courses, right? Where we've really made inroads is, CSET handles a lot of the presentation training for the summer research experience for undergraduate programs funded by the National Science Foundation. We have a START and MARC NIH grant that goes year round. We run the science communication training for those students. And then we run the MD PhD presentation course for the medical school. And so that's graduate education, but that's sort of a workshop model, not a classroom model. And so we've been able to make pretty good inroads into that sort of space. It's a lot easier than getting departments to change the required coursework in their curriculum.
Yeah, although you probably would like to see that.
Yeah, well, we would. I mean, we're really interested in understanding how graduate programs train students in science communication.
Yeah. And so, in the sense of growth, right? That I think you're at this juncture right now. You're learning or have learned a lot of lessons, right? As you think about what's next, I heard you mentioning something about 4+1, right?
Right.
Potentially thinking, how do you venture into that space? What are the limiting factors for you as a program as you think about what is the next phase of CSET?
So faculty size is always one limit. Okay. That's an argument that faculty love to use to try to get deans to give them more lines. That's probably not something to bet the house on in any given year.
Yeah.
Which is what makes a 4+1 program pretty attractive, because the subset of graduate courses that would have to be developed, coupled with the graduate courses we already have on the books, makes that pretty doable, especially if the students are doing a master's thesis project. And so that is one idea that we find very attractive. We've also talked about a secondary PhD. So at Vanderbilt, we have had programs that were second PhDs that's augmented a current one. Something more than a certificate. It requires the core hours to get the PhD in this interdisciplinary area. We have PhD students in the sciences who would be interested in something like that. But the PIs in the science are worried that it pulls students out of the lab, which is a valid concern. So there's some tension in how that would work. And we don't have a good answer to that quite yet.
Yeah, because I mean, ultimately, if the concern is probably the time to degree, that if they do this, then it extends the time to degree. But I mean, there's some who would argue actually, if anything, it doesn't change time to degree, and the other programs are finding that it actually keeps them, right? Students actually engage and continue.
That's right. If they're interested, they'll find new aspects. The number of PhD students, we've had a number of PhD students, particularly in the chemistry program, who took the graduate technical writing course, or who took a graduate course and became science writers with their PhD. So
yeah, so I think that you're right. The tension is there, right? Because you do have these guidance and the training grants that are in place right now. For example, right, the language changed a couple of years ago, right? That is more inclusive about the variety of careers,
right?
In STEM, no longer is the goal you can become only faculty, right? Because that provides really kind of major constraints, right, for those who are designing these programs. So, man, David, I could talk to you all day long here, and I want to. So we need to have you back. That's one.
Okay.
So we are actually going to get into a rapid round. Okay. Questions.
All right.
So, try to keep your answers brief, and if you cannot, go for it. It's okay. All right. Okay. We're all friends. What is the most popular course in the program?
I think it is probably technical writing.
Technical writing. Okay. If you had a magic wand, what would you do first to support the program?
I would speed up the time until, so that we could move into our building sooner.
Tell me, why is that for the community?
Oh,
And
so that we can build community faster, right?
okay, because right now you're floating in space somewhat, a little bit, as you mentioned earlier.
Absolutely. And so and the space is supposed to be available as summer of 25. I'd like it sooner.
I see. What new courses do students want to see?
I think students would like to see new courses that were centered around science policy. So we have a few science policy courses, but that really strikes. We have broad science policy classes. I think they'd want specific, like food science and policy, energy science and policy, that sort of thing. I also think that students would be really interested in more sort of venues for writing, science essay, a course on scientific essays, a course on a creative writing course, things like that.
What would you say is your bread and butter skill set that you're training students on?
How to talk, how to speak, and how to write.
I like that. Straight to the point. And in terms of the experiential part of this, I believe you have community organization partnerships that you have, right? To help students place them to get these experiences.
That's right.
Can you tell us about one of those partnerships that's ongoing right now?
Sure. So one of the programs that we interact with is VSVS, which stands for Vanderbilt Students Volunteering for Science. And so if you look at the literature is pretty clear that we lose kids in kids' interest in science in middle school. And so VSVS is an opportunity to take essentially lunch bag experiments into under-resourced classrooms in Metro Nashville public schools. And so the students design the experiments. They make sure that they meet the state standards. They develop them for the hour time period that they have. They build out the kits. They travel to the schools. And we have about 800 students at Vanderbilt who volunteer. It's the largest student organization on campus.
Wow. And I think you need the whole community, right? Back to your
point
earlier, community development, how important that is. So David, as we finish up here, what advice do you give? So there's two questions there. One advice for other program directors who want to set up something from like CSET at their universities. And then two, to those leaders, the deans, and I believe you were a dean once yourself. What is your advice in terms of their thinking in supporting programs like this in a sustainable way, right? So let's start with the program directors like yourself right now. What advice would you give them if they're trying to design something like this?
The most important thing is you have to balance the desire to have course offerings, the flexibility of your curriculum, with actually owning your curriculum. So if you have a curriculum that's menu-based, so you're not teaching it, then that makes running the program very challenging. And it makes the students' training pretty diffuse. And so having it doesn't necessarily have to be a core like ours, but having a critical mass of faculty to offer a palette of recurring courses that students can take and get to know CSET faculty, your faculty, is critical. So that's what I would say to directors.
And then how about the deans?
To deans, I would say programs like CSET offer a public-facing opportunity for a combination of science and the humanities, which we typically don't get in higher education, right? And so by supporting an organization like the program in Communicating Science and Technology, you're actually doubling down on the investments you've made in the humanities and the sciences, because you have a group of dedicated faculty and students who are actively engaged in promoting the discoveries, the science, the connection to society that you're making. And so that's an easy investment. It's free advertising. It's free publicity. It's free engagement with the community. And so we're cheap.
Well, you heard it. And something we didn't talk about, for example, is that you're sitting on mountains of data, right?
That's
From all the students that are taking the courses, what they're telling you, and then the faculty, what they're learning from doing this, because their curriculums are not static, as I know, they're probably changing, adapting accordingly. And we did not talk about any of that. Hence, David, we need you back next time.
All right.
Thank you, everybody. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.